The stars stretched endlessly before the indomitable, humanity's first deep space explorer. Captain sat in his command chair, watching the vast darkness of space. His crew of 43 had been traveling for 6 months, mapping new systems and searching for habitable worlds. It was routine work, peaceful and quiet. That peace shattered when the sensors screamed an alert. "Captain, multiple contacts appearing," Lieutenant Minu called from his station, his voice cracked with surprise. "They just appeared out of nowhere. No warp signatures, no engine trails, nothing." Leaned forward. On the screen, massive ships materialized around them. Not just one or two, but hundreds. Each vessel dwarfed the indomitable, gleaming with strange metals and pulsing with unknown energy. The smallest ship was 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Battle stations," said calmly, though his heart raced. His crew had trained for this moment, but training and reality were different things. "Open all communication channels. Let them know we're peaceful." Before Minu could respond, a signal flooded their systems. Every screen on the bridge changed to show a single being. It looked vaguely reptilian, with smooth blue-green skin and 4 golden eyes that blinked independently. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English. "Greetings, vessel of Earth. I am ambassador of the Galactic Council. Do not be alarmed. We come in peace to welcome you to the greater community of intelligent life." Studied the alien carefully. The creature wore elaborate robes that shimmered like liquid metal. Behind, he could see what looked like a massive chamber filled with other beings, each more strange than the last. Some were humanoid, others were clouds of gas or geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. "This is Captain of the Earth vessel Indomitable," he replied. "We're honored to meet you. We had hoped to find other intelligent life, but we never expected such a grand welcome." Made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species has been observed for some time, Captain. We've waited for you to develop faster than light travel. Now that you have, it's time to bring humanity into the fold of galactic civilization." The ambassador's image shifted, replaced by stunning visuals. Cities that stretched across entire planets, ships that moved between stars in seconds, technology that seemed like magic, beings of 1,000 different species living together in harmony. The images were beautiful and overwhelming. "For 10,000 of your years, the Galactic Council has maintained peace and order across 3 galaxies," explained. "We protect emerging species from the dangers of space. We share knowledge and technology. We ensure that all beings can live without fear of war, disease, or suffering." Watched his crew's faces. They were mesmerized. Engineer whispered, "Captain, look at those ships. The power systems alone are centuries ahead of us." "The Council offers humanity a place among us," continued. "In exchange for membership, you will receive access to our technology, our protection, and our vast knowledge. Your species will leap forward in advancement. Diseases that plague your people will be cured. Energy problems solved. The stars will truly be yours." It sounded wonderful, too wonderful. Had spent his career in Earth's military before joining the space program. He had learned that when something seemed too good to be true, there was always a catch. "What would humanity need to provide in return?" he asked carefully. "Very little," said smoothly. "Simply accept Council authority in matters of galactic importance. Your military forces would be integrated into the Council defense fleet for efficiency. Your independent expansion would cease, as the Council manages colonization to prevent conflicts. And of course, Council law would supersede your local laws to maintain universal standards." The bridge fell silent, felt his stomach tight. Behind the flowery words, the message was clear. Surrender your weapons. Stop exploring on your own. Let us make your decisions. He glanced at his crew and saw the same realization dawning on their faces. "I see," said neutrally. "Ambassador, this is a significant decision. I need to consult with Earth's leadership before I can respond." Tilted his head. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, suggesting confusion. "Consult? Captain, surely you understand the opportunity we're offering. Every species we've contacted has been eager to join us." "I'm sure they have," replied. "But humanity makes decisions collectively. I'm just a ship captain. I need to speak with our government." For the first time, the ambassador seemed uncertain. How long would this consultation require? Considered, messages to Earth took hours at their current distance, even with quantum communication. Earth's leadership would need time to debate. 48 hours should be sufficient. It was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, other council members seemed to be having rapid discussions. Finally, the ambassador nodded. "Very well, we will grant you this time. But Captain, understand that this offer is not optional. The Council cannot allow unregulated species to operate independently in civilized space. It creates chaos and danger. Every species must join us eventually." "I understand," said. "We'll have our answer in 2 days." The communication ended. The alien fleet remained surrounding them, a silent reminder of power beyond human comprehension. Minyu turned to with wide eyes. "Sir, did they just threaten us?" "They did," confirmed. He opened a channel to Earth, but very politely. As he composed his report, thought about humanity's history. Every empire that ever existed had offered protection in exchange for submission. The strong always told the weak it was for their own good. Sometimes it even was, but it was still submission. He sent the full recording to Earth along with his analysis. The ambassador seemed genuine, the technology was real, and the threat was implicit but clear. Join us or face the consequences. As he waited for Earth's response, looked at the alien ships surrounding his vessel. They were magnificent and terrifying. Humanity had finally reached the stars only to discover they were small fish in a very big ocean. The question was whether they would swim freely or accept a cage, even if that cage was gilded with advanced technology and promises of peace. Had his own opinion, but the decision wasn't his to make. He was just a captain, but he knew his species. Humanity had never been good at following orders, especially from those who claimed to know what was best for them. The next 48 hours would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. Would they kneel and accept protection, or stand and face the unknown alone? Deep down already knew the answer. He had read enough history. Humanity always chose freedom, even when it was the harder path. He just hoped the Council was ready for what that meant. The emergency session began at midnight in Geneva. President looked exhausted as she called the meeting to order. Representatives from every nation filled the room, their faces showing a mix of excitement and concern. Above them, holographic displays showed the alien fleet surrounding the Indomitable, a constant reminder of what waited beyond Earth. "We've all seen Captain's report," began. "We've watched the recordings. The Galactic Council has given us 48 hours to decide humanity's future. I've called you here to make that decision together." Admiral Park stood first. He was a large man with gray hair and scars from the Pacific conflict 20 years ago. "Let me make sure I understand correctly. They want us to hand over our military. They want us to stop exploring space on our own. They want their laws to override ours. Is that accurate?" "That's correct," confirmed Minister Song, who had spent the last 6 hours analyzing the Council's terms. "In exchange, they offer technology, protection, and membership in their organization." "It's not an organization," said flatly. "It's an empire, they just use prettier words." Doctor raised her hand. She was Earth's leading expert on theoretical alien contact, though until now her work had been purely academic. "Admiral, I understand your concerns, but consider what they're offering. Medical technology that could cure cancer, aging, genetic diseases, energy systems that would end our resource problems forever, knowledge accumulated over 10,000 years. My team estimates accepting their offer would advance humanity by 500 years overnight." "At what cost?" shot back. "We give up our freedom, we become their subjects." "We become their partners," corrected. "They call it the Galactic Council, not the Galactic Empire. Other species seem content with the arrangement." "Do they?" asked Minister. She was younger than most in the room but had a reputation for seeing through political. "Or do they have no choice?" Captain noted the implicit threat. "The ambassador said council membership wasn't optional. That's not partnership. That's surrender with benefits." The room erupted in debate. Some argued for acceptance. The technological leap alone would solve countless problems. Humanity could finally move past its struggles with climate, energy, and disease. Others insisted that independence was worth any price. Let them argue for an hour before calling for order. "I want to hear from our military leadership. Admiral Park, if we refuse the Council's offer, can we defend ourselves?" Looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'll be honest. Their smallest ship outguns our entire fleet. They have technology we can barely understand. In a direct confrontation, we'd last maybe an hour." The room fell silent. Someone whispered, "Then we have no choice." "There's always a choice," said a new voice. General Han entered the room, followed by several officers. She looked ancient, well past normal retirement age, but her eyes were sharp. "I fought in the unification wars. I've seen what happens when the powerful offer protection to the weak. It never ends well." "General, this isn't the same situation," argued representative from the Asian Union. "These aren't human dictators. They're an advanced civilization offering genuine help." "Help that requires we surrender our sovereignty," countered. "Young man, I've lived 87 years. I've learned that anyone who offers you safety in exchange for freedom is lying. Either they're not truly offering safety or they're not truly offering freedom, usually both. Step forward. General, respectfully, you're letting human history bias your judgment. These aren't humans. Maybe they genuinely want to help." "Maybe they do," agreed. "But they still want control. Good intentions don't change that fact. President rubbed her temples. The debate was going in circles. Let me ask a different question. What happens if we say no? They isolate us, said. She had been studying the Council's previous contacts. Economic sanctions, technology embargoes. They'll block us from trade routes and diplomatic relations. Essentially, they'll try to strangle us until we beg to join. Can we survive that? Asked. Admiral considered carefully. It would be difficult. We'd be on our own in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations. But, yes, we could survive. Humanity is good at surviving. Surviving isn't thriving, pointed out. Isolated and alone, we'd fall further behind. In a century, the gap between us and Council species would be impossible to close. Or, said engineer who had joined via video link from the Indomitable, we'd innovate. We always do when our backs are against the wall. The greatest human achievements came from necessity, not comfort. The debate continued through the night. Arguments became heated. Representative from the European Federation pleaded for acceptance. Think of the children who could be saved with their medical technology. Think of the lives improved. How can we be so selfish? Think of the future humans who will grow up as subjects instead of free people, responded. How can we be so short-sighted? At dawn, President called for a vote. This decision will define humanity for generations. Every nation gets one vote. The majority decides. Are we ready? The room grew quiet. Each representative looked at their personal displays, considering. This wasn't just politics. This was history. Began the count. Those in favor of accepting council membership. Hands rose slowly, raised hers immediately. Several others followed, counted carefully. 23 votes for acceptance. Those in favor of declining. More hands rose quicker and more certain. Hands shot up, followed. General raised hers with a grim smile. The count climbed higher, 31 votes for independence. Those abstaining. 6 representatives couldn't decide. 6 people who saw merit in both sides and couldn't bring themselves to choose. Took a deep breath. The decision is made. Humanity will decline the Council's offer. We will remain independent. The room didn't erupt in cheers or protests. Everyone understood the weight of what they had just done. They had chosen the hard path, the uncertain path. They had chosen freedom over safety. Notify Captain, ordered. Give him the exact wording we discussed. Be respectful but firm. As the representatives filed out, approached. Madam President, I hope you know what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, replied tiredly. I've given humanity a chance to stand on its own feet. Whether we rise or fall, at least it will be by our own choice. Join them. I've already begun emergency preparations. If the Council reacts badly, we need to be ready. They won't attack, predicted. That would contradict everything they claim to stand for, but they'll make us suffer in other ways. Let them try, said. She looked at Earth's image on the main display, that beautiful blue marble that had been humanity's home for so long. We survived ice ages and world wars. We survived ourselves. We can survive being alone in the stars. 6 hours later, Captain received his orders. He read them 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he smiled. It was the answer he had expected, the answer he had hoped for. When Ambassador appeared on screen to receive humanity's decision, delivered the message clearly. The people of Earth thank the Galactic Council for their generous offer. After careful consideration, we respectfully decline. Humanity will chart its own course through the stars. The silence that followed lasted 17 seconds, counted each one. Then the council chamber visible behind erupted in chaos. Beings of every shape and size began shouting in languages couldn't identify. Look stunned. Captain, I don't think you understand. In 10,000 years, no species has ever refused council membership. Then I guess we're the first, replied. We understand perfectly, Ambassador. That's why we're saying no. The communication ended abruptly. The alien fleet remained motionless around the Indomitable, but could imagine the chaos happening aboard those ships. Humanity had done the impossible. They had said no to power, to protection, to advancement. They had chosen to be free. The council chamber had never seen such chaos. Ambassador stood at the center of the Great Hall, watching in disbelief as representatives from 847 civilizations argued simultaneously. The translation systems could barely keep up with the flood of voices. Order, High Chancellor, Or's voice cut through the noise. The ancient being pulsed with barely contained energy, his form shifting between states of matter. We will have order. Slowly, the chamber quieted. Could feel thousands of eyes, sensors, and awareness fields focused on him. He had been a diplomat for 3 centuries and had successfully integrated 42 species into the council. Never had he failed. Never had he even imagined failure was possible. Ambassador, Or intoned. his voice resonating through every being present. Explain to this council how a primitive species with barely 12 colonized worlds has refused our guidance. Projected the recording of his conversation with Captain. The chamber watched in silence as the human calmly, politely, and firmly rejected everything the council stood for. They chose freedom over advancement, said when the recording ended. I've studied their history since contact. This species has a peculiar obsession with independence. They fought countless wars against their own kind over the concept of liberty. Madness, declared Counselor, a crystalline being whose species had joined the council 6,000 years ago. Do they not understand we offer them salvation from their own primitive nature? They understand, came a new voice. Counselor stepped forward. She was human, sent by Earth before the crisis to observe the council and learn diplomatic protocols. Now she was the only human in a chamber full of beings who suddenly viewed her species as a threat. Counselor, or acknowledged, perhaps you can explain your species' irrational decision. Took a breath. She was a diplomat trained to find common ground and build bridges. But she was also human, and she understood her people better than any alien ever could. High Chancellor, may I ask a question first? Speaker. When your species joined the council, did you have a choice? Or is energy form pulsed with what might have been confusion? Of course, all species choose to join. But what would have happened if you had refused? The chamber fell silent, realized he had never considered that question. In 10,000 years, refusal had never been an option because no one had ever tried. Continued, we've reviewed historical records available to us. Every species that encountered the council faced the same choice, join or be isolated. Some civilizations that tried to remain independent were embargoed, sanctioned, and eventually collapsed. You call it a choice, but it's an ultimatum. We offer protection, Counselor protested, knowledge technology. At the cost of sovereignty, replied. Humanity has experience with this. Throughout our history, powerful groups have offered protection to weaker ones. Sometimes the offer was genuine. Sometimes it was a pretext for control, but always the price was submission. This council is not some primitive warlord, or said coldly. We maintain peace across 3 galaxies. We prevent wars. We guide emerging species away from self-destruction. What your kind calls submission, we call civilization. And that's exactly why we said no, said quietly. You're so certain you know what's best for everyone that you can't imagine anyone might want something different. The chamber erupted again. Some council members demanded humanity be forced to comply. Others argued for patience. A few, very few, seemed to consider words. Raised his voice above the chaos. Chancellor, we face an unprecedented situation. If we allow humanity to refuse, other species may follow. The entire structure of the council could collapse. Then we must make an example, suggested Counselor L, a warrior species that had submitted to the council after a brief conflict 2,000 years ago. Send the fleet. Show them the consequences of defiance. No, or said firmly. The council does not conquer, we guide, we lead. If we resort to force, we become what we claim to prevent. Then what do you propose? Asked. Or considered for a long moment. His energy form dimmed and brightened as he thought. Isolation, complete isolation. Humanity wishes to be independent. Grant them that wish. Bar them from all trade routes. Forbid all council species from interacting with them. Embargo all technology and knowledge sharing. Cut them off completely. Felt her heart sink. It was a death sentence disguised as respect for human choice. They'll survive a few decades, or continued, perhaps a century, but eventually they'll realize their mistake. Their technology will stagnate, their colonies will struggle, their people will suffer, and then they'll beg us to reconsider. They all do eventually. Has this been done before? Asked the counselor didn't recognize, a floating sphere of some kind. Twice, confirmed. They tried to remain independent 4,000 years ago. Within 50 years they were pleading for admission. The attempted neutrality 1,800 years ago. They lasted barely a generation before joining us. Then we have precedent, or declared. The vote is called, all in favor of complete isolation of human space. The chamber lit up with affirmative responses. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly united in their decision, watched in horror as the count climbed. Out of 847 voting members, 819 voted for isolation. Only 28 voted against or abstained. The measure passes, or announced. Effective immediately, all council space is closed to human vessels. All trade with humanity is forbidden. All technology sharing is prohibited. All diplomatic relations are suspended. Humanity will be left to face the galaxy alone until they recognize the wisdom of council guidance. Stood frozen. She needed to warn Earth, but what could she say? That the entire galaxy had just turned its back on humanity. that they were now completely alone. As the council adjourned, approached her. "Counselor, I am truly sorry. I wish your species had chosen differently." "Are you?" asked bitterly. "Or are you just sorry we didn't do what you expected?" Didn't answer. He simply walked away, leaving alone in the emptying chamber. She found a secure terminal and encrypted a message to Earth. Her hands shook as she typed. President needed to know what was coming. The entire planet needed to prepare. Her message was simple. They think we'll break, show them they're wrong. As she sent it, thought about human history. Every empire that had tried to isolate and starve humanity's ancestors into submission had eventually fallen. The British Empire learned it with the American colonies. The Soviet Union learned it with its satellite states. Even internal movements within nations learned that you couldn't force people to submit forever. But those were human conflicts. This was different. This was humanity against the entire galaxy. 800 civilizations had just agreed to pretend Earth didn't exist. Could humanity really survive that? Could they thrive despite it? Remembered a quote from the old days before unification. Churchill, during Earth's darkest hour, had said something that stuck with her. "If you're going through hell, keep going." Humanity was about to go through hell. The question was whether they'd keep going or break under the pressure. She thought of Captain calmly refusing the Council's offer. She thought of President choosing freedom over safety. She thought of Admiral ready to defend Earth with insufficient weapons against overwhelming odds. A small smile crossed his face. The Council thought isolation was punishment. They thought humanity would crumble and beg for readmission. They really didn't understand humans at all. Humans didn't break. They bent, they adapted, they found new ways forward. You could chain a human, but their spirit remained free. You could isolate them, but they'd build new connections. You could try to crush them, but they'd rise again stronger. The Council was about to learn what every tyrant in human history had learned the hard way. You can't force people to submit if they refuse to kneel. Finished her message and prepared for the long journey back to Earth. She was recalled immediately, of course. The Council didn't want a human representative anymore. Fine. She had work to do at home anyway. As her ship departed the Council station, looked back at the massive structure. It represented 10,000 years of peace, order, and stability. But it also represented 10,000 years of stagnation. The Council had become so comfortable in their power that they forgot what struggle meant. They forgot what it meant to fight for survival, to innovate out of necessity, to choose the hard path because it was the right path. They were about to remember. Humanity would remind them. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. And the Council would learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe wasn't a powerful enemy. It was someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. 20 years had passed since the Council's embargo began. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Defiant, humanity's first true warship, and watched the construction of New Sol Station through the viewport. The massive structure orbited a planet the Council had deemed uninhabitable. Too hot, they said. Too much volcanic activity. Useless for colonization. They were wrong. Below him, 3 million humans lived and worked on Prime, turning the hostile world into a thriving colony. Massive heat exchange systems powered the cities. Volcanic minerals fueled the industries. What the Council called uninhabitable, humans called challenging. And humanity loved a challenge. "Admiral, we have incoming ships," reported Lieutenant from sensors. 20 vessels, mixed configuration. They're broadcasting friendship codes. Smiled. "Tell the Alliance they're cleared for docking, and prepare a welcoming committee." The Alliance, just one of 17 groups of independent species that humanity had befriended in the past 2 decades. They were small civilizations, too remote or too primitive for the Council to bother with. The Council had ignored them for centuries. Humanity hadn't. Captain Song approached, holding a. She was young, born after the Council's rejection, part of a new generation that had never known a galaxy that welcomed them. "Sir, the Alliance representatives want to discuss the new trade route through the Outer Rim. They've mapped 12 systems the Council doesn't monitor." "Good," said. "Every route we find is one more they can't control." On Earth, President was in her final year of office. She looked older than her years, the stress of 2 decades of isolation showing on her face. But as she reviewed the latest reports, she couldn't help but smile. The Council had expected humanity to crumble. Instead, they had grown stronger. Doctor entered the presidential office. She looked different than she had 20 years ago. Back then, she had argued for accepting the Council's offer. Now she was humanity's chief scientist and had led the research that made human survival possible. "Madam President, the latest figures are in," said, projecting holographic displays. "Our population has doubled. We now have 68 colony worlds. Our technology has advanced by what we estimate to be 300 years compared to our per-contact baseline. 300 years and 20, repeated. How? Necessity, said simply. When the council cut us off, we had two choices, give up or innovate. We chose innovation. Every problem forced us to find solutions. No alien technology to rely on meant we had to develop our own. No trade routes meant we had to find new ones. No allies meant we had to make new friends. She changed the display to show a map of human space. It had expanded dramatically, reaching into regions the council considered worthless. We've colonized worlds they said were impossible. High-gravity planets, low-temperature worlds, systems with unstable stars. We've learned to adapt because we had no other choice. Minister Song joined them. She was now the head of external relations, managing humanity's growing network of non-council allies. We've just received confirmation from the collective. They want to join our trade network. That makes 21 independent groups working with us. The council won't like that, noted. The council doesn't get a vote, replied. These species are outside council space. They can deal with whoever they want, and they want to deal with us because we treat them as equals, not subjects. Across human space, the transformation was visible everywhere. On Mars, Engineer oversaw the construction of the quantum drive system. It wasn't as fast as council hyperdrives, but it was theirs. Designed by humans, built by humans, understood by humans. We've achieved 97% efficiency, he reported to his team. That's better than our projections by 12%. His assistant, a young woman named, asked the obvious question. If we're advancing this fast on our own, how advanced would we be with council help? Paused. It was a question many asked. Maybe we'd be more advanced, or maybe we'd be dependent. Every piece of technology they gave us would be something we didn't learn to build ourselves. We'd always need them. This way, everything we have is ours. We understand it. We can improve it. We're not using someone else's tools. We're making our own. On the edges of human space, Captain, now a Commodore commanding a small fleet, made first contact with a species the Council had never encountered. They called themselves the crystalline beings who lived in asteroid belts. You are not from the Council, the leader asked, their voice translated through human computers. No, confirmed. We're independent. The Council offered us membership. We declined. This crystalline form shifted colors, indicating surprise. You refused them. We did not know that was possible. It's possible, assured them. Difficult but possible. We're here to offer trade and friendship, not to demand submission. What do you want in return? Information, resources, and if you're willing, friendship. We're mapping this region of space. The Council ignores it because there are no useful worlds here by their standards, but we've learned that useful is relative. They considered this. The Council visited us 300 years ago. They said we were too primitive, our habitats too unstable, our resources too difficult to extract. They left and never returned. Their loss said, we see potential, not problems. Are you interested in talking? They agreed. It was the beginning of another alliance, another connection in the growing network of species that existed outside the Council's control. Back on Earth, in the same Geneva chamber where the decision had been made 2 decades ago, General Han, now ancient but still sharp, addressed a gathering of military and civilian leaders. The Council expected us to fail, she said, her voice still strong despite her age. They thought isolation would break us. They were wrong. We've not just survived, we've thrived. And do you know why? She looked around the room at faces young and old. Because we had no choice. When you have everything handed to you, you become soft. When you have to fight for everything, you become strong. The Council has been comfortable for so long they forgot how to struggle. We never had that luxury. Admiral, attending via hologram from New Sol Station, added his thoughts. I've studied Council technology. It's advanced, yes, but it's also standardized. Every species uses the same basic designs. There's no innovation because there's no need. They've reached a plateau. While we're still climbing, Minister finished. Our technology might be less advanced, but it's improving rapidly. Theirs hasn't changed significantly in thousands of years. How much longer until we match them? Someone asked. At current rates, 50 years, estimated. Maybe less if we keep innovating at this pace. And that's matching current Council technology. If they don't innovate and we do, we might actually surpass them in a century. The room buzzed with excitement. The impossible dream seemed possible now. But not everyone was celebrating. Counselor, who had returned to Earth after her time with the Council, cautioned restraint. We need to remember why we chose independence. It wasn't to compete with the Council. It was to be free. If we become obsessed with matching them, we lose sight of what made us different. She's right, President agreed. Our goal isn't to become the Council. It's to prove there's another way. We're doing that by building networks based on cooperation, not control, by treating other species as partners, not subjects, by choosing innovation over stagnation. As the meeting continued, reports came in from across human space. New colonies thriving, new technologies developing, new alliances forming. The picture was clear. Humanity wasn't just surviving isolation. They were using it to forge their own path. On a council border station, Ambassador reviewed reports about human activity. His 4 eyes narrowed as he read. Humans were supposed to be contained, isolated, weakening. Instead, they were expanding. They were trading with species the council had ignored. They were building ships and colonies and alliances. He sent an urgent message to the council. The humans are not behaving as predicted. They're growing stronger, not weaker. We may have underestimated this species. The response came back quickly from High Chancellor, or continue observation. They will break eventually. They always do. But wasn't so sure anymore. He had studied humans for 20 years now. He understood them better than any other council member, and what he understood made him nervous. Humans didn't break, they adapted. They didn't surrender, they endured. They didn't accept limits, they exceeded them. The council had meant to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, humanity was teaching the galaxy something the council had forgotten, that the strongest spirits were forged in the hardest struggles. 20 years of isolation had made humanity more determined, more innovative, and more united than ever before. The council had created exactly what they feared most, a strong, independent species that refused to kneel. And across the stars, other species watched humanity's example with growing interest. The council chamber fell silent as the human delegation entered. 25 years had passed since humanity's rejection, and this was the first time humans had requested an audience. Ambassador watched them carefully, expecting to see a defeated people ready to beg for admission. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. Admiral led the delegation, now gray-haired but walking with quiet confidence. Beside him, President, in her final month of office, carried herself like someone who had nothing to prove. Behind them walked Minister, Counselor, and a dozen other human representatives. They didn't look defeated. They looked like equals. High Chancellor Orr said, his voice carrying through the vast chamber, "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." "We assumed you had come to reconsider your position," Orr replied. His energy form pulsed with certainty. 25 years of isolation should have crushed human pride. "The Council is prepared to accept your application for membership, though terms may need adjustment given your years of defiance." Smiled slightly. "Chancellor, we haven't come to join the Council. We've come to offer you an alternative." The chamber erupted. 800 civilizations began talking at once, felt dizzy. An alternative. Humans were offering the Council an alternative. Silence, or commanded, he focused on, "Explain yourself, President." Gestured and holographic displays filled the chamber. They showed human space, now sprawling across hundreds of systems. More importantly, they showed the 23 independent species humanity had befriended, their territories connecting to form a loose network across the galactic rim. 25 years ago, you isolated us because you believed we would fail without your guidance, began. You were wrong. We haven't just survived. We've built something new. A network of independent species working together by choice, not by compulsion. We call it the Terran Accord. Impossible, declared Counselor. Those species are primitives. They have nothing to offer each other. They had nothing to offer you, corrected. But they have plenty to offer each other. Resources you don't value, knowledge you never sought, perspectives you never considered, because you were too busy measuring species by your standards instead of letting them define their own worth. Continued the presentation. The Terran Accord operates on different principles than the Council. Members retain complete sovereignty. They contribute what they choose. They benefit from collective security without surrendering their independence. And most importantly, membership is truly voluntary. Anarchy muttered, "You're describing anarchy." "We're describing freedom," replied. "Real freedom, not the illusion of choice you offer." Orr's form brightened with anger. "You dare come here to insult us after we offered you everything." "We're not here to insult you," said calmly. "We're here to show you that there's more than one way to organize a civilization. Your way has worked for 10,000 years, but it's also stagnant. When was the last time the Council had a truly new idea?" The chamber fell silent. It was a good question and everyone knew it. "Our technology advances," Orr insisted. "Does it?" Step forward. She projected new data. "We've analyzed Council developments over the past 1,000 years. Your advancement curve has flattened. You improve existing technology incrementally, but you don't innovate. You've become comfortable. While we," added Admiral, attending via hologram, "have advanced more in 25 years than you have in a millennium. Because we had to. Because we couldn't rely on someone else's solutions. We had to create our own. You expect us to believe you've surpassed Council technology, Counselor L challenged. In some areas, yes, confirmed. In others, no, but the gap is closing faster than you think, and that should concern you because we did it without any of your advantages. Imagine what we could achieve if we worked together as equals instead of masters and servants. President brought the conversation back to center. We're not here to threaten you or compete with you. We're here to offer partnership, real partnership. The Terran Accord is open to any species, including Council members who want something different. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. Humans weren't just surviving outside the Council. They were offering an alternative to the Council's authority. This is sedition, said. You're trying to undermine 10,000 years of peace and order. We're trying to offer choice, replied. The same choice you claimed to offer us but never actually did. Or was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less certain. And if we refuse your offer, if we maintain our isolation of human space, then we continue as we have been, said simply. Growing, building, thriving. Your isolation hasn't hurt us, it's freed us, but it has cost you. 23 species now trade with us instead of you. More ask about joining the Accord every year. You can maintain your walls, but we'll keep building bridges. And if we try to stop you, L asked, his warrior nature showing. Then you become exactly what you claim not to be, said. Conquerors, oppressors. You'll prove that all your talk of guidance and protection was just a cover for control. Is that really what you want your legacy to be? The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members were furious, others seemed thoughtful, a few appeared intrigued. Approached the human delegation during a recess. You've changed, he observed. When I first met Captain, he was cautious, uncertain. Now you all act like you've already won. We have, replied. Not by defeating you, but by refusing to let you define us. You wanted us to believe we needed you. We proved we didn't. That's victory enough. You're gambling everything on this, said. If the Council rejects your proposal, you'll have made powerful enemies. We already have powerful enemies, pointed out. You've been trying to strangle us for 25 years. The difference is now we're strong enough that you can't ignore us, and our example is spreading. You can try to stop us, but that will only prove we were right about you. The vote took 3 days. The Council was divided like never before. Older civilizations wanted to maintain tradition. Younger species, inspired by humanity's example, demanded change. The arguments were fierce. Finally, or called for the vote. The proposal is this: restructure the Council to allow member species to retain sovereignty while cooperating voluntarily. Those in favor. The count was agonizingly close. 412 in favor, 435 against. The measure fails or announced. But before despair could set in, something unprecedented happened. Counselor, representative of a species that had joined the Council 3,000 years ago, stood. Then I invoke the right of withdrawal. My people are leaving the Council to join the Terran Accord. Shock rippled through the chamber. The right of withdrawal existed in Council law but had never been used. It was theoretical, a safety valve that no one thought would ever be triggered. As do my people, declared another counselor, then another, then 3 more. In the end, 89 species chose to leave the Council and join the Terran Accord. It wasn't a majority, but it was enough to shatter the Council's authority forever. Or watched his empire crumble. You've destroyed everything we built. No, said gently, we've given you a choice. The same choice we wanted from the beginning. Stay as you are or change, it's up to you. Over the following months, the Council reformed. Not completely, but enough. They began offering real partnership instead of demanded submission. The Galactic Council became the Galactic Commonwealth, a federation of equals rather than subjects. Not all species joined the new system. Some preferred the old ways, but enough did that the balance of power shifted forever. Years later, Admiral stood on the bridge of the Unity, a joint human-alien vessel, watching a diplomatic mission to a newly contacted species. Ambassador stood beside him. They had become unlikely friends. I underestimated your species, admitted. We all did. You underestimated everyone, corrected kindly. You stopped seeing species as individuals with their own worth and started seeing them as problems to be managed. That was your mistake. And now we all have a chance to do better, together. On Earth, in the same chamber where the decision had been made decades ago, a memorial had been erected. It listed the names of every person who had voted that day. Above it, an inscription read, on this day, humanity chose freedom over safety, struggle over comfort, and independence over protection. May we never forget the price of liberty or the courage it takes to stand free. President, now elderly and retired, visited the memorial often. Sometimes people asked if she regretted the decision, knowing how hard the years had been. She always gave the same answer, not for a second. We gave up safety, yes, but we gained something better. We gained ourselves. Humanity had rejected diplomacy as the Council defined it. They had shocked the galaxy. But in doing so, they had reminded every species of something the Council had made them forget. Freedom is not given, it's chosen, and once chosen it changes everything.